My engineer that works here when we do records here at my studio, he just came back from 2 months of cutting a new Crazy Horse record. So there's going to be a new Crazy Horse record. And he said it was just the rawest thing he ever experienced. They'd come in and just practice and practice, because those guys are not professional musicians. When they're not working with Neil, the drummer's a house painter. I mean, they're just not pro players, per se. They're in Crazy Horse. They're band guys. And this time, the only one thing you guys might be interested in if you love Neil Young is that Nils is on this record. He's back for the first time with Crazy Horse since the early 70s, And he just said, man, he said, I thought this was the worst, most badly planned thing I'd ever seen. That all of a sudden, out of nowhere, all of a sudden they had 12 songs and they were great. And that's how Neil does it. He just practices until something pops up, and he doesn't care if it's perfect or not. He does not give a shit about that, which is great.
Oh, God, yes. I'm a crazy fanatic. I love Neil Young. I was reading some interviews just last week. I think it was Uncut magazine, and they had some interviews with Billy Talbot and Ralph Molina, talking about Crazy Horse, experiences, and they were talking about making the, like Down by the River, stuff like that. Like, yeah, man, we fell into a groove and we just cut it. It was just boom, it was over. And those kind of things, and how. Neil would call him in. We're going to learn a bunch of new songs, and they learned, 12 new songs, and they, play them, and then they go to a recording session, and he'd bring in 12 newer songs, Oh, we're not going to play those today, like, what are we going to, I got this one. And then he'd play another one, and they just, he's talked about how prolific he was and how impulsive he is, that he moves at a different pace than most people like him. He's he's one of those guys that just has a lot of ideas. Always. Yeah, anything I can find about him, I read. All those Mojo magazine articles and Uncut magazine articles are always great, because they'll just take one little thing and kind of go into it, and you'll find stuff in those articles that you won't find in Shaky. You can read Shaky, but a lot of those little side stories aren't in there. So it's cool to have that perspective. Tonight's the night. It's hard to beat.
That's my choice.
Oh yeah, but what's the one that has Barstool Blues? It's the end of side one. Barstool Blues.
The Zuma. Is it the same era?
Yeah, that's my favorite Neil Young track.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know why, but it just that's the one that I really like the most.
There's something about Tonight's the Night.
Oh.
Like when you hear Tired Eyes.
What a record. It is perfect, because he knows what he's doing. He's conveying the emotion,
There's just a feel to that,
yeah,
and an honesty to that record that seems like something to try to attain.
Well, we were talking about him last week. We were talking about, we were telling what do they call the thing that tunes the voice now? Auto-tune. We were talking about that. My friend Bobby Field, the record producer, calls it the No Singer Left Behind box. But we were talking about how, well, there's an artist right there that would never do that. I mean, if you listen to some of those guitar solos, he plays with notes that are deliberately out of tune. He's deliberately out of tune because that's a thing. It creates a tension. And if you went and tuned those records, it would sound awful. It would suck. But he plays with tuning the way the Velvet Underground did on the first album, John Cale. Sterling Morrison and John Cale were deliberately detuning their guitars to get a more irritating sound, and it's a great record. I think it's the best Velvet record. It's the best. But they deliberately played out of tune on certain things, to create an effect, to create an emotion, and that's John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Miles will come in under the note a little bit. He will play because it's part of the expression, You don't play everything perfect and that kind of music. Perfect entails that you play, there's emotion in notes that are slightly out of tune. When Miles does it, it's brilliant. It's deliberate. It is. You can see it when he's doing it. I saw him live, and he's got that. He'll go up. You can see him thinking before he blows a note. He's like, one note. It's like, wow. I wish I could play one note and make it sound like that. It's like, whoa. It chills up your spine. Oh, I was playing with Lucinda Williams, and he was backstage at a show. I just saw him there, and I was like, whoa. I didn't mess with him, though, because he was, he was listening at the time. And well, we had played, he had listened to us, so I can't remember who he was listening to, but I didn't have, I wasn't going to go up to him.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to be that person.
What do you think about his rig?
Oh, I think it's great. It's personalized. I always like people that have a personalized sound that is, and he's worked on it for his whole life. The Tweed Deluxe and that black guitar, that black Les Paul that's modified and changed pickups and changed parts, but it is what it is. I saw Crazy Horse one time, and it was they were playing on this, it was a big coliseum, and they were on this giant stage, and they got all this stuff. And the whole show, they were all standing, bumping into each other in front of the bass drum. These three hippies and a drummer, up there just like going, with their heads bent over and, kind of like having a little powwow there, And I was like, but man, it sounded like $1 million. It sounded like a jet airplane taking off, But, there was a show that didn't have any showmanship. There wasn't any posturing or, how's everybody doing? And none of that shit,
So I'm up in New York City where we're doing this, and I got friends up there, and call this gal I know that works over at Reprise. And she goes, hey, we got some tickets for Neil Young tonight. Want to come see? Sure. Well, it's not the regular Crazy Horse thing. It's the Blue Notes. I went, don't care. Neil Young. I get down, they've got a disco club called The World in New York City. And, their disco beats the crap out of their rock and roll money. And, but that's where they're throwing the show. And, he gets up there and he plays, and it's really cool. He does not do a single, Crazy Horse song. It's all Blue Notes. This note's for you. And he's got the 6-piece horns, and, it's just like, it sounds really cool. He's playing through this old Silvertone 610 model. And, he comes with the greaseback hair. Then I'm sitting there, and, he does his show. And as soon as his show's over, the uncha, 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 starts hitting, I'm going to call it loud. I was there with two gals, and they said, you want to go meet Neil? And I'm going, what am I going to say? And so we're walking out, and they said, well, stop, hang here just a minute. We got to say goodbye to him. We're a record company. Oh, sure. Knock, knock, knock. And they got a dressing closet, for what, an 8-piece band, 9-piece band. And Neil comes popping out to say goodbye, and they drag him over. And like you and I are sitting right now, we're about, 4 feet apart? And the girls are on the side about 4 feet out. And Neil says something Neil like, and uncha, uncha, uncha is going on in the background. And in the foreground, and I can't hear a word. And so I go like that, and he shrugs his shoulders and waves and walked back in. And the girls look at me and go, "Why didn't you say anything?" And I went, "I couldn't hear him." "Oh, all he said was he likes your band." And you give him the so what shrug. I am sick to my stomach. I am seriously, I think I'm going to have diarrhea. You know, I am all the way down there. Always in my top 5, period, you know, go through periods where he's number 1 guy, has just given you the biggest cold compliment he could possibly give. And you shrug your shoulders. Now, the world is way downtown, and my hotel is up on 56th Street. It's about 1 in the morning on a weekend, and I am so mad. I just look at the girls and go, I have to walk home. Dan, you don't want to do that. I have to walk home. Anything that befalls me, I've earned it tonight. You know, I've acted like a jerk who somebody that's a hero tried to compliment me. Now, it may have been all through ignorance, but I walk back, you know, bad news bums, you know, kind of take a couple of steps toward me and then just turn back away. It's just like I am putting off a vile aura all the way up Broadway until I get up, you know, to my hotel. I go in, I lay in bed, kicking myself, you know, over and over. I get about an hour's sleep that night. I'm serious. This tore me to pieces. They have an exercise room, and back then I was jogging. So I get up on a treadmill in the morning after I've had a cup of coffee, and I'm still just full of fury and self-hatred. Absolutely chock full of it. Now let's run some of it off, you know. And I get up there, and I don't know how much you know about treadmills and speed and stuff, but I'm doing 7 miles an hour for 45 minutes. So I finish up. They had a little changing room that I did change in. And I walk in there, and I'm, you know, pull my shirt off and then look over, and there's Neil Young dropping trowel. You know, he's still in his tighty whities. And I went, "You have one opportunity, Mr. Baird. Do not blow this." So I come up, and it was one long sentence. "Hey, man, you tried to say hello. I couldn't hear a thing in that club last night. You know, was that a Silvertone amp you're using?" Eyes light up. And he goes, "Yeah, it's one of the old 610 models." And I went, "I thought so, man. Those things are very, very cool." You know, and we just started talking guitars and amps. I asked about Old Black, found out that it was the second Les Paul custom ever made. It was actually still in the, you know, what do they call them? The prototype, in a prototype run. And we talked for 10 or 15 minutes. Everything was great. I shook his hand, and off away we all went, et cetera, et cetera. But I walked out of there. I am the king of the universe. I talked guitars and amps with Neil Young while in our underwear. How much more awesome can I get? You know, I don't have a place on Mount Olympus. He might, but you know, it's just redemption, full redemption. And the fact that he was kind enough to dismiss an understanding. Now, I think we touched back on it one time during that conversation. He went,
I was producing an album for Nils Lofgren. It became the album Crooked Line. We were working on this particular song, we got to the solo section, and I was telling Nils, what I think we need here is sort of a non-solo solo, like a Neil Young harmonica solo. And Nils was like, I'll call him. And Neil Young is my favorite artist, and I love the way he plays the guitar, and I like how he sings, and I like that he's one of the few guys that pronounces a hard R like the Midwest people. And so we went out there eventually to do some overdubs at Neil's ranch. And, I saw the barn, and his guitar tech, Larry Craig, he took me around. And, because he could tell how much of a Neil fan I was, he went and showed me he's got several barns. The equipment barn where they recorded Freedom, and I saw like his amp stash, and he had 10. At one time I had 3 blonde bassements. Neil had 10 blonde bassements with the matching cabinets. In addition, imagine if you loved equipment and you never had to sell any to get more equipment. So it was really kind of phenomenal. When we were at the studio and kind of waiting for Neil to show up, the engineer and those guys were like trying to, waging bets to see what car he would show up in, because he has a barn. It's actually a steel building that houses all of his cars. And when he showed up, they're like, oh, he's got the Stretch. And the Stretch was a 4-door Dodge Power Wagon from 1975, which is like the toughest truck. It really is the toughest truck, probably. I talked to him about it later on a little break because, I was like, man, I love that truck. My band director at the University of Wyoming, he had one of those trucks. And he was like, I got it brand new in 1975. And it had like 1/4 panel was primered and everything. And so they were like, when he pulled up in the Stretch, he comes in and says to one of the guys, get Hank. And I'm like, Hank? And one of the guys goes out, and in the back of his truck, there's a guitar case, and it's not a Martin D45. It's Hank Williams' Martin D45. Larry Craig, had Hank there. He was like, would you like to play Hank? And I was like, oh, I don't know. It's like, well, okay. Like you got to at least, play a G chord on it. And it was a tremendous instrument. It was just, the whole thing was so emotional, it was really hard to keep track of what was going on, especially with this kind of stimulus. I mean, he had a beautiful Neve console. He had NS10s up on his console, but he had someone else make pine cabinets for them that were wood grain, so he wouldn't look at the black Yamaha thing. It was custom. And you're up there in the California redwoods, and it's hard to explain this, but usually when you look at the console and the speakers, the live room is out in front of you, right? Not at this place. There were French doors that opened to the California redwoods, both in front of you and behind you. And then they just had a TV that showed you the recording area. You know how you go to a studio and they have some extra outboard gear, and some is in the rack and some is in little rack cases that are stacked around. And all of those rack cases were made of hand-rubbed teak wood, like the boat. It was overwhelming. Even when he was going from the house to the studio, he didn't do it without Hank. That's just part of his thing. And for me, it was just the whole day and a half was like a fantasy thing. We wanted Neil to play some guitar on one of these songs, and, we got Old Black out, and played it through the rig with the whizzer and everything. He showed me that. They were like, "Do you want to play it?" And I'm like, "Oh my God." It was I really dug it too. It was set up like my guitars. I run sort of what I refer to as a resistance setup. They're not really easy to play because I don't want it. Nobody said it was supposed to be easy. And Neil's was very much a resistance setup. At one point, we had talked about bringing Neil to Maryland to cut basic tracks with us. And then it just seemed like, it was going to be really hard. And Nils had a lot of great equipment, and I had access to stuff. And I was like, well, I know that Neil uses this one specific Tweed Deluxe, and I've got one that I borrowed, and he could Larry Craig was like, "No, we'd have to bring ours." And it's like, "Well, it's a Tweed Deluxe." It's like, "Well, Neil's has been rebiased for 6L6 tubes, not 6V6 tubes. We'd have to bring ours." And then the whizzer. I'm like, "What's the whizzer?" And, people now, there's articles out there about the whizzer, but somebody of his had made this thing. The Fender Deluxe has 3 knobs on it. His buddy had made this thing that would go on top of the amp, and it had electric motors in it that he could activate with the foot switch to actually turn the knobs on the amp. So, like when you see him with that crazy looking pedal board, this big red thing that has all these switches on it, all those things are going to pedals and different things, and they're going to the whizzer. So when he wants the amp louder, he hits that, and this thing turns the knob on the amp, which is kind of like the greatest, like you've done it yourself. You've turned around in the middle of a song, and that's really the best way. So his amp was on 6, and then he could nudge it up to 11 with his foot. So he did this fabulous harmonica solo for us. He does a few passes of the harmonica solo, maybe 8. And then he comes back in, and he's like, okay, it goes 3 to 5 to 8. That was the comp. Like, he had the comp in his head. And, it sounded great. But when I got it back to Maryland with Nils, I put up the multi-track, and I really wanted to see if that was it. And it really was. That was the only way it would work. Like, he did the first 3 passes, and he's like, okay, I've got that phrase. Then he did the next 4 and 5. He's like, now I've got that part. And then he was working on the end. So that was really kind of amazing that he had the comp in his head as he walked back into the control room. Neil at the time was kind of recovering from a really bad bout of tinnitus, and he hadn't played electric guitar in a year and a half. They were working on Harvest Moon, which was the first record that they did everything at the ranch, including the mastering. But he played electric for us. He would sit outside of the control room and listen a few times, and he had his beautiful vintage roll top desk, and while he's listening, he's opening his mail, and people had sent him some Lionel trains, and he was open a box and go, "Do you think this is good or very good?" In like vintage eBay terms. So that was pretty interesting. So we're playing this one song, running it down. Neil comes in and he goes, "Hey, what's going on? Why are you turning that guitar down?" Nils is like, "Well, Neil, Eric played that on the basic track, and we're going back and forth, and it's supposed to be kind of a left brain, right brain conversation, but I'm going to replace that, so I don't want you to be hearing that. And Neil is standing there, Nils and I are sitting at the console. Neil is standing there, and I don't know if he's a pretty big guy. So he's standing right there, and we're looking up, and it's feeling more and more like a Clint Eastwood movie. And he makes us wait. We're like, and he's like, well, Nils, I think you'd be making a really big mistake. He goes, what Eric played there was sick and awful and great. And you really need to leave that there. And Nils was like, okay. And that was that. And I was sitting there, I'm Neil Young super fan, and I'm like, sick, awful, and great. I got it. It's my tombstone. This really was a fantasy for me to be there, not just as a fan, shaking hands, but I'm the producer, I'm hitting the button every once in a while, hey, Neil, could you do that again? It's just like I always do. And to cap it off, and Neil at the time, he had started with 500 acres that he bought with the money from Harvest to move there from Topanga Canyon. And then over the years, he kept just buying up the neighbors, and his manager got a place right nearby. And so when you went to stay there, and when he didn't take down all these old buildings, he just fixed them all up. So like Ben Keith, the steel player, we stayed at his house, which was on the property. And at one point, and Neil had been, smoking weed throughout the day. He had like some really good weed that he had Ohio blue tip matches, boxes of them all over the place. And his pot was so good, it wouldn't, he'd take a couple puffs and then it wouldn't stay lit because it was really moist. But later on, when work was done, I was able to have some with Neil. And, I'm from a small town outside of Chicago, Batavia, Illinois. And at this one point, we went to, past the joint, and here I'm with my hero, and all I can think of is like, the painting on the Sistine Chapel. And I'm like, wow, I had only been married for about a year, and I was like, what if they asked me to stay? I just have to call home and say, I gotta stay. They asked me to stay. It was a crazy, it was one of the crazy things that happens when you make music, you end up in a situation like that.
Yeah, we did the Horde tour for a couple of years, and one year Neil was on the tour, and it was great. He opened up every day of the festival. He'd be there right as the gates opened and played this little back of the truck stage right in front of the gates. So when people came in, there was Neil Young playing a solo set for like 20 or 30 people every day. It was incredible.
Solo acoustic?
Solo acoustic, yeah. Walk in, there's... yeah. So I caught all of those. Those were great. And he was really accessible. He set up he's part owner of Lionel Trains, and he set up this big train system at every stop of the tour. And his son ran the train set. He had developed. He has a extreme case of cerebral palsy, I believe it is, and Neil developed technology so that his son could control the train, and that's kind of what they did together during the day, and it was a great thing. But we were in Homedale, New Jersey, playing on that tour, and we were playing a kind of a bluesish tune of Drew's, and I'm taking this solo, and about halfway through the solo, the crowd just erupts, and I'm thinking, well, that was a pretty cool lick, but what's going on? And I look to my right, and Neil Young is looking over my shoulder with the harmonica in his hand, ready to take a break. And I'm like, yes! It was great that he sat in with us. And he was just a great approachable cat. And on the last night of the tour, my college roommate and I, it was a slow traffic jam getting out of there, and we got on a golf cart. It was a big full moon. He and I both mooned Neil Young sitting on the bus. It was a good night. Old college roommates to do that, it's kind of.
Neil saw it.
Oh yeah, he was sitting in the front seat. And I think we might have been yelling something about Happy Harvest Moon. You get what you can out of this life. Yeah.
Was he smiling about it?
Oh yeah, yes. I think he did enjoy it. It was the last night of the tour, so I never got to get a review.
So were you a big Neil fan before this?
Oh, absolutely. Harvest to me was like the definition of the sound that I loved. That texture, that lyrically, the album's all over the place. Really, but specifically that texture that I imagine them playing in the barn. So on the back cover of Harvest, there's that picture of the Stray Gators playing in the barn, and that's my book. I want to live in a barn and have a hayloft concert series. Yeah. Yeah. More barn. Sitting out on the lake, floating, listening to mixes. Yeah. That's the ticket.
Do you remember who was in Neil's band at that tour?
Spooner Oldham was in it.
That's pretty damn good right there.
Yeah. Well, there were a couple. There was one year when it was Crazy Horse for just a few shows.
Did you have any interactions with Spooner?
No, just saying howdy in the food line, kind of stuff, but no musical interactions or conversations. I'm sorry to say. Yeah, you've got a slew of buses parked, and at that time for us, we were traveling in a yellow school bus, so it looked real good sitting amongst the Prevosts, and we were pretty psyched that there's catering every day, and somehow through the maze of dressing rooms and all that stuff, you can get to catering, and they feed you, and there's all the drinks you want, and breakfast, lunch, and dinner going on, because it takes a big crew to be there, and it can't be taken off to go grab something to eat, so you got to feed them. And we lucked into that program too, and we were pretty psyched about it. We were out, I think it was a 6-week run, and we're driving our own school bus and stuff, trying to keep up with these bands that have drivers and stuff, so it was great not to have to be stopping to eat. But yeah, you go into this cafeteria type thing, and usually a buffet kind of line, and you hang out and pick a table to see who you want to hang out with that day, and get in strange conversations with really interesting people. It's a good thing. And then sometimes that leads to collaborations. We were on the side stage, which was just collaborations all day. Bruce Hampton was the guest artist, and he sat in with most people. Taj Mahal would be there. He'd get out in the morning and go out and find a good meat shop, bring back a bunch of stuff to cook up. Then he'd open the bay, and he had, I swear, 40 buckets of seasonings, sauces, like secret mojo stuff, man, like 40 tubs of things, and you know, he'd get up first thing in the morning, go to that meat shop, pull out those spices, marinate that meat, you know, whatever, get the smoker going, and that became like the social center of the tour. Hanging out with Taj, smoking meats, and you know, potato salad would show up out of somewhere, and you know, yeah, that was the real cooking going on. It was Blues Traveler and Panic and, you know, Toad the Wet Sprocket, Taj, and, you know, it was a fun scene. You know, I've been trying to figure out a way to do that again. I love summers with a bunch of bands coming in on an event. You know, something that's just not, you're not going to have that experience, you know, every day. It's great, but man, you got to get somebody with a lot of money to sponsor the run. Yeah, you know, we've never been good at finding money. But yeah, one of these days that would be great to do. Festivals are really so great. I guess, you know, we play festivals all the time, so that's kind of that feeling. But to take a thing on the road, you know, for a month of shows is a different kind of thing. We've been doing that with Railroad Earth and the Yonder Mountain String Band last summer, and we're doing more this summer with Leftover Salmon, and it's a good time. It's really, the crews all love hanging together, and musicians, of course, and it's great because you know, often when you're traveling, you're kind of missing each other, and if you do see each other, you don't get to hang for more than a few minutes, it seems, you know, before you got to go your other ways and all that. So it's fun, and you know, music is about community and people and enjoying your music while enjoying your friends, you know. So to get to do that on a festival run is really, really cool. And Horde was certainly that.
That's the best part about music, I think, is everybody chooses to be in this room together at this moment, and you can we all choose to share something, and then just find out whatever it can be, and it's a community, and it goes both ways. And I love that about music when it works.
Yeah, especially when you have time to cook it properly, you know.
Well, Social Distortion got into some sort of altercation with Sonic Youth. And so we had a hit record at the time. We played the Cow Palace. We did Reno. We didn't do LA because I think somebody else did that one. Maybe Social Distortion. That might have been their last one. So we jumped on in Reno, which was weird because about a year or two before that, we had been in Reno in the same parking lot with Leonard Skinner. So it was like we're probably the only band that's ever opened for Leonard Skinner and Neil Young, period. And then also within a time frame of, you know, Neil Young, you know, because it was the original Skinner that was survived the plank. It was Ed King. It was everybody. It was Leon, Ed King. It was a great band, and they had guitar chords. There was no radar unit. It was really, they were. And it was one of those things where it was like we were trying to go out with people, but Nirvana had already kind of hit a little bit, so we were on the wrong side of the fence of that situation, you know. So we were struggling to find people to open for. So yes, so Social Distortion, thank you very much, was the reason that we wound up opening for Neil Young. And so we were open for Sonic Youth, who opened for Neil Young. So we were like, it was kind of like that, you know. Yeah. And I don't know if Neil Young might have seen us. I don't know. We really got along with Pancho, Frank Sampedro, right? And so he's the Crazy Horse guitar player, who had been with him for a long time. And so we had one after the tour was over. We played the motocross championship in LA at the Forum. we were in the hay bales on the end of the thing, and he joined us for Rockin' in the Free World, which is another good moment in our history.
Did you get to meet Neil at all during?
I mean, briefly, he's really kind of like, he hung out with Sonic Youth. We were kind of like the tour was almost over, and we were just, I mean, it was okay. I mean, it was great to play. The Cow Palace was the best because that was general admission. So, but besides that, it was usually just an amphitheater or something where, you were playing for people, and then it was just fun to watch people watch Sonic Youth, and they were great. Always. I think Seattle was in an arena too. That was really good. I remember in Seattle, my dad lived in Seattle, so the Sonic Youth dressing room was like full of celebrities. It was like Matt, whatever. Who's the guy that was Matt Dillon? He was making that movie up there, and it had a bunch of celebrities and stuff. And our room, of course, is like crickets. There's like, we're sitting in the, those arena locker rooms. So we used to bring Christmas lights. We had ours decked out pretty good, as best we could, because there's just mirrors and lights. And I remember they kept kicking Chris Novoselic out for something because he was just really hammered or something. I don't know. And my dad kept letting him back in. Like they kick him out, he'd be in the back door, and then my dad would go outside, have a cigarette, and be like, "Oh, you just come back in. You just come."
They were kicking him out of the backstage area.
They kicked Chris out at least once, and my dad let him back in. He's like, whatever. But I think he was, they were just, I don't know what was happening. It was the coolest thing I'd ever did. The coolest part of that tour that ever happened was that somewhere in Edmonton, in the hotel lobby, was a strip club, and it was one of these weird Canadian strip clubs where they had like girls would shower. It'd be like a shower, and so I remember like waiting to go catch something, a shuttle or something, and then Neil Young came in with like Thurston Moore and sat down, and I wasn't sitting with him. I was sitting like, there's Neil Young and Thurston Moore in the lobby bar, which was a strip club. So I thought that's going to be a moment of history. But we were huge Neil Young fans, of course, and Rockin' in the Free, especially that era. That was 91. I think it was Reggae Glory Tour. So it was really cool to see Crazy Horse every night. And, it's a magical thing to see Crazy Horse because just the guitar sounds are just, he has all these secret amps under the stage, and it's just this really great vibe. And it's just, he's Neil Young. It was just insane. And at the end of the tour, he signed my guitar. I have a white guitar. He signed it, and it had like a mark in it or something like that. Like it had a big hole punched in it. It was a J200. I still have it. It lives mostly at David Barbie's studio in Athens, but so he signed it. But right before that, it was the last show. I think it was in Vancouver maybe or something like that, and the band got into they screwed up like Rockin' in the Free World, or they screwed up something at the end of the show and got into a fight backstage, so we could hear the band fighting. And so we're like, it's the last show, why would they be fighting? And then we're like, so it was like, please don't ask for autographs until the end of the tour. So we're kind of like, can we please get our autographs, sir? So he signed mine, and then he signed my drummer Jeff Sullivan. He signed a band that don't fight, don't play right. Neil Young. I was like, oh, why couldn't he wrote that on my guitar? It's like that's like the most valuable. Oh, sorry, drumhead ever. So. But it was a similar thing. It was like when we also did we also toured with the Who, which was like the Quadrophenia tour. They redid Quadrophenia, so that was like another, like they needed a band that would play till the sun went down, because they didn't have the actors from Quadrophenia. They had other people playing the roles as Jimmy, which was kind of weird, but it's like. It's on a big screen. It was like projected, I think. I don't think it was a video screen. The best part of that, too, is we did, you get like $500 or for opening those shows, which I don't care, but we asked for like asked for tickets to the show, so we watched the Who every night, Quadrophenia every night. Same thing with Neil Young, was like, we'll just want tickets, like we just want to make sure we sit, and we did. We would open, then we go sit out and watch Sonic Youth, and then watch Neil Young, and then Neil Young made that Weld record. He took all the feedback and made we're talked him into making this, or not talked him into it, but.
Did you ever cross paths with Neil anytime after that?
I think we opened for him. I mean, we didn't open for him, but we were at Live Aid in Iowa. No, it was
Farm Aid? Was that what it was? Farm Aid?
Oh no, Farm Aid.
Farm Aid, yeah.
That's what it was. It was Farm Aid. I just watched the special on Live Aid. That's what it was. It was Farm Aid, and it was like Roseanne and Tom Arnold were the hosts, and it was cool. The cool thing was that it was the Highwaymen, and Ringo was there with somebody, and I remember Neil Young was there, and we were kind of in a weird influx. We had just released this record called Smoke, which wasn't a very popular record. I mean, we sold, like, we had a gold record from that one, and then so I don't know, the song on it, I think we might have done Turn It Up or Turn It Off, which Todd Snyder just recorded for this acoustic version, really cool, but I don't know if he liked us. I'm not sure Neil Young really knows who we are. You know what I mean? I'm not sure he spent any time exploring our catalog or anything, but I don't know. He was never like, man, we really love where you're coming. I don't remember him actually speaking anything positive to me ever. You know,
one of the worst parts about the business is you get to do this thing, but there's no real communication, so you don't really know how they feel, even though you were invited onto the thing.
Yeah, but and I know that we were invited because of the agent or whatever, and I mean, I have people open for me sometimes that were like, I can't believe we open for you, and I'm like, I rarely watch the opening act and if I don't see the opening act, it's usually because I'm afraid that they're too good and that I'm going to try to replicate them in some sort of way. So it's kind of it's a badge of honor if I don't know. But I mean, like we have. So I don't know. I don't know if they, rarely do those huge acts. I know they got so much more on their mind, and I think Neil pretty much sleeps, or not sleeps, but he gets himself together. Like after sound check and stuff, he does his own thing in his bus, and I learned that, like, when he has a California flag up, like, don't knock on the door. Not that I would knock on the freak Neil Young's door, but like, don't knock on Neil's door. I was like, okay, I could do that. I don't know if he knows me from Adam, but thank you, Neil, for. Maybe Frank told him. I don't know.
Hey, friends, I hope you're doing well. I want to talk about Neil Young today. I was reading this article in The Guardian. It was an interview with Henry Diltz, a great photographer. He's taking these iconic images that you've seen all your life of people like Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, great photographer. It's an interview with him, and it's kind of a collection of anecdotes, and it's a really fun read, and I'll put a link to it down below, so I think you might dig it. But one of the things that he says in that is that there was originally a different album cover for Harvest, and I'd never heard that before. Maybe you've heard that before, but I'd never heard it, so I figured I would share that. He says now he's up at Neil Young's ranch, Broken Arrow, and this is from the article, Henry Diltz in The Guardian. He says Gary, and when he says Gary, he means Gary Burden. Gary Burden did all of Neil's album covers except one, Harvest. One time we were up there, Neil was sitting on a hay bale with a hat playing a little guitar. I think that photo would have been the cover of Harvest, except Gary and Neil had an argument or something, so he never designed that cover. It came out with just the word Harvest on it instead. It's not official, but that photo is the perfect Harvest photo. And the times that I would hang out with Neil at his ranch, he was very funny. He would laugh about everything. He's got a great feel for life, but he's very private. Now, I had never heard this. I've never heard that there was a possibility of a different album cover. So I was thinking, I wonder if I can find these photos. Are they out there floating around and we just don't know that they were meant to be used as that? So I started looking, did a Google image search for Henry Diltz, Neil Young, and just started going down. And a few photos popped up of Neil Young with a parlor guitar, a Martin parlor guitar, sitting on a hay bale in his barn, and it's got to be it. I'll put a link right here. This is the best of those, I thought. And now imagine if this was the cover of Harvest. And I'll also show a few of the others, and you can tell me which one you think might have been the best. I've never had any feelings one way or the other about the album cover of Harvest. Maybe you have strong opinions one way or the other, but I think this first photo that I've shown you right here, I think I'd like that as an album cover much more than the one that ended up on there. I don't know. Have you heard this story? Is this out there and I've never heard it? Sometimes, if people don't know things, how do we know if we've never been told? So, maybe you all know this and I don't. But I try to be easy on people if they've never heard something before. It's not willful ignorance. And I circled back to Gary Burden, and I went to Thrasher's Wheat, which is, I've talked about it before, it's just a great website, Neil Young resource. You go way down the Neil rabbit hole. I was just kind of reading around on there, and they have some quotes from Gary Burden, which I thought was pretty good. He says, I've been working with Neil on album covers since his release of After the Gold Rush in 1970. I would listen in on Neil's recording sessions. I mean, really listen to the music. And most of the time, the music would tell me what the design wants to be. I'd present my ideas to Neil, and he'd give me his own ideas and feedback, and we would incorporate both into the album design. Neil is a prolific writer and has a great vision. It's nice to collaborate with someone that doesn't do design. They see beyond the boundaries we put on ourselves and push us farther. I really like that sentence. To see beyond the boundaries that we put on ourselves and push ourselves farther. That's a quality it took me a while in life to get better at. But and it's a constant. Want to constantly improve on that one. Maybe you guys share that one. Maybe you're fortunate to where you never did that in the first place, but they see beyond the boundaries we put on ourselves and push us further. Neil doesn't understand the concept of we can't do that, and his ideas almost always end up being right. And that's Gary Burden on Thrasher's Wheat. I really dig most of those Neil album covers. Some of them don't completely jump off onto me, but I digged them a lot. The one thing I remember reading, I think it was in Rolling Stone quite a while ago, was that Neil wanted the actual album jacket for Harvest to be biodegradable. I guess it is biodegradable, but he wanted it to quickly, as soon as you would peel the plastic off, it would begin disintegrating at a rate much quicker than album covers now would last a long, long time, which was a clever idea, and it makes a good story, but the record company's like, we can't do that. People will be so mad if their album cover disintegrates a year after buying it or a month after or whatever. It's a clever idea. And also on Harvest, I dig the album a lot, but man, when it gets into the stuff with the London Symphony Orchestra, it's just never clicked with me. Never clicked with me at all. So the stuff he did in Nashville, I love. But I actually, now what's this say about me? I don't dig the stuff they did with the London Symphony Orchestra, but he recorded that, I think it was in Barking. It was either Barking or Leytonstone, but I was in Leytonstone a few years ago, and I went to the building, some hall or something, where they recorded that. So I just wanted to go to it, and so I'm a sucker for visiting these sites where interesting thing happened. So even though I don't dig that part of the record, I still traveled to witness where it took place. What's that say about? I think I'm hopeless is what it says about me. Way too far down the rabbit hole. But I will link both of those links down below, and you guys can read it and tell me what you think. You like the pictures better than the album cover that we actually have, or would you rather stick with the one we have? And I'll talk to y'all somewhere down the road. Much love to you. Hey friends, I hope the morning's treating you well. Hope you got your coffee if you need it. I hope the New Year's treating you well more than anything. I woke up on New Year's Day. I got up really early because I had to come to Nashville. And I was carrying stuff out to the car, loading the car up before the sun came up. It was just completely dark. And on my last trip out, I was standing next to the car and I smelled something. I was like, what is that? I started smelling something bad. It smelled real bad. I was like, what the hell is that? And I realized what it was, like, oh my God. And I looked down, and I had stepped in dog crap and had it all over my shoes, all over it. So that's how my New Year started. And I figured, all right, we got that out of the way. Now we can get to the good stuff, get to the really good stuff this New Year. And I drove down here to Nashville, and when I got here, I sat down and relaxed, and I opened up YouTube to watch a couple videos. And I had suggested to me a video that said something about Neil Young playing with Led Zeppelin. I'm like, what? I had never heard of this. So I guess it's some kind of a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing, but I don't pay any attention to that stuff at all. I'd been to the museum there, and it's a great museum, but I could care less who's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and who isn't, and I don't want to watch award shows or trophy parties. So I just never paid attention to it, and I didn't know this happened. I'm probably the only person who has anything to do with this channel that doesn't know it. You guys have probably all seen it, but I clicked on the video, and there's Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, and Robert Plant, and I'm not sure who the drummer is. I don't think it's Jason Bonham, and Neil Young, and they start playing When the Levee Breaks, except for they're playing it different. It's just kind of a little more choppy. It isn't the isn't that thing going on. And somebody's out of tune. We can guess who that might be. But the thing that struck me that I absolutely loved about it was Neil Young was absolutely, completely invested in it. I mean, he was 100% in from the get-go. And he's like, this is my one chance in my life. I'm playing with Led Zeppelin. Let's do it. And the rest of the band, like Jimmy Page, is kind of laid back and kind of standing around, yeah, okay, we're doing this. And Robert Plant's kind of that way. They seem really reserved. John Paul Jones is just, being kind of the same way with a terrible looking bass. Not the best looking bass I've seen, in a while, but it goes on, and Neil is just all in, which is one of those things I love about Neil Young. He's just, he doesn't do it halfway. Even when he's messing up, he's going to mess up all the way, but he was just all in with it. And I'm not going to claim it sounds great, but man, it sounds real. And it reminded me of being a kid in a basement or garage jamming with friends and like, what are we going to play? He's like, I don't know, just play something in A. And everybody starts just kind of playing along. And it's like that, where it doesn't sound great, but hey, we're doing it. We're doing it, man. This is great. All right. And Neil's got that kind of energy. And as it goes along, it seems like Robert Plant starts enjoying it a little bit more. And he's like, says something to somebody, and they put a guitar on him. So Robert Plant's playing guitar. I've never, ever I can't remember ever seeing Robert Plant play guitar. I have no memory of that at all. Maybe he's done it a lot and I've just never noticed. I probably should watch more Zeppelin videos. I saw the song Remains the Same in a midnight movie back in like 1982 or something. So, that was enough for me, I think. But so I'm watching this and everybody's just like really, Neil's into it. And I think it's a little bit infectious and everybody starts to get into it. And at some point, magically they're in tune. Where like maybe a guitar wasn't out of tune. It was just somebody, the intonation problem because, fretting too hard. I don't know exactly what that was, but so you have Jimmy Page laying back playing rhythm while Neil just kind of goes off. And Robert Plant starts playing this like one note solo type thing or whatever. And everybody starts enjoying it. Like by the time this thing gets rolling and is going through quite a while, they're all in and they're all enjoying it. And it's fun to watch them. It's fun to imagine these people being those kids in a basement. And it's a beautiful thing that I would not have expected to see from some trophy party or award show or whatever. I liked it. Like I said, the music wasn't phenomenal or anything, but I dug it. At some point, Robert Plant starts singing, there's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear, which is fun. He's drawing it back around to Buffalo Springfield. And I dug it, man. If I could have like a little bit of Neil Young's enthusiasm, like just a little bit in a little bottle, and I could take that out every now and then and just get fired up when you need to get fired up, it'd be a good thing. You don't want to take it at the wrong times. You don't want to be enthusiastic at the wrong moments, but I don't know. I enjoyed watching Neil be all in, and I enjoyed watching them play together. It reminded me of, I don't know why I came to this, but at Fast Times at Ridgemont High, I saw that when I was a kid. And there's a scene where I forget the guy's name. He's trying to explain to the other guy, if you're gonna like make out with a girl or something, side 2 of Led Zeppelin 4 is what you need to listen to. And they immediately cut to a scene with this guy in the car, and they're playing Kashmir. And I remember being a 12-year-old kid in the movie theater and like watching this, I'm like, that's on Physical Graffiti. That's not Red Zeppelin 4. And I'm being upset in the theater thinking, I'm a kid and I know that's the wrong album. And you have all of these powerful, rich people in Hollywood putting this thing together and nobody noticed. I bet you some of these people have met Led Zeppelin. I bet somebody involved in putting this together knows one of the members. I was really upset about that. I told Amy about that a year or so ago, and she's like, what? Because she'd never seen the movie because she has better taste than me. And I was like, no, they did that. She's like, you're 12 years old and you know that that's off a different album? And I'm like, yeah. I was down the rabbit hole early, and there was no hope for me at a very young age. I knew my Led Zeppelin albums, and she laughed and all of that. But I was thinking about that while I'm watching this thing with Neil. And then Neil stepped in his own little bit of dog crap this week, pulling out of the Glastonbury Festival. And then I think somebody explained to him, you got the wrong idea about this, Neil. You got the wrong idea about it. And he backtracked, and he's like, I got the wrong information. I'm going to do it. And that's that enthusiasm with Neil. I love Neil. I'm a big Neil Young fan. I don't listen to Zeppelin anymore. If I'm in the car and something comes on, there's some songs that that's cool. I dig that. But, it's been a long time. I was still a kid when I would dig Zeppelin and all that. But Neil, still love Neil as much as anybody. Neil's music. I listen to Tonight's the Night on the drive down here. It'll happen sometimes. And I don't know. I hope things are good with you. I hope you're starting the year out right. I hope I got a lot of things going on. Very busy. I'm down here in Nashville mixing a record. that I recorded a couple weeks ago, and that'll be out sometime later this year. So I'm all excited about that. I talked about it in a video back last week before, I don't remember. It all blends together and is a blur after a while. But I really do hope things are good with you guys. I hope you're taking care of each other, starting out the new year right. Tell me down below if you saw Fast Times at Ridgemont High and you know the scene I'm talking about, and if you caught it when you were a kid. I bet you half of you did. And maybe I'll put a link up here to that video of Neil and Led Zeppelin jamming, and maybe you can tell me what you thought about it. I know I'm the only person who hasn't seen it. But either way, I appreciate you guys being here, and I'll see you somewhere down the road. Much love to you.